So it looks like we got a little bit of an announcement today from the Warhammer community site with cartography in the old world. And what does this really mean? Well, we first get a glimpse now of, I guess you could say, a redone map for Warhammer Fantasy, the old world. We can see Albion off on the far coast here. We can see Bretonnia, Stalia, and Tilia. The border princes through here, and then the old world as it is, that being the Emperor or Empire. Norsk up in the far north here with the with Troll Country, Kislev over here. The typical kind of map we see in Total War Warhammer 1, actually. So by drilling down on this map, we can kind of see that not a lot has changed. Everything looks pretty much the same. But when we look down a little bit further, we get a further reveal. And I'm actually going to zoom this in here. And it has caused quite the bit of controversy here, saying what era this is in. You know, we know that we're going back to the old world, and we know that Games Workshop is going to be visiting portions of the old world that they've always wanted to explore or discuss further. A lot of people thought, hey, that means Cathay, Nippon, Ind, a revival of Araby, stuff like that. But it looks like we might be starting in a different direction with Warhammer the Old World. It might be a series of little vignettes. I think that might be the big takeaway I'm getting from watching this little video, and we'll explain this in just a second here. I think that rather than them starting essentially a 9th edition Warhammer Fantasy, hey, just come what may, you just do whatever you want. The world is as it was in the 8th edition. I think what they're going to do is expand into these little tiny mini campaigns. This is what people think is the Age of 3 Emperors. It might actually be the War of the Vampire Counts. It really depends, to be totally honest. But we might see, you know, them do special rules for the Sundering, special rules for the War of the Beard. Kind of exploring these very pivotal historical moments in each of the major factions' timelines. We might actually get a really cool formation of the old world, wherein you have a Sigmar represented as a model with rules and a whole entire narrative-driven campaign, everything like that. I would love to actually see that more so than just to jump back to a 9th edition Warhammer Fantasy. Sure, give me those rules; they'll be present, but I think it'd be very fun to explore a lot of the big events that happen throughout the Warhammer Fantasy world and are talked about and are so pivotal, but you really don't have any say in or do anything of, or you don't get to see the units of that era, or so on and so forth. So this to me kind of says that Games Workshop is saying, okay, well, we have this entire backlog of amazing lore and history that we've created for Warhammer Fantasy over the many, many editions that we've done it. Why don't we just explore that? And that's in a lot of ways, that's what Horus Heresy is. And they've already said that Warhammer the Old World is going to take a lot of notes from Warhammer 30,000, the whole Horus Heresy and Great Crusade kind of reboot that they did with Forge World and the Horus Heresy series. And that explores units that we've never seen before, that we've heard mentions about in some of the older lore of Warhammer 40,000 in the 40th millennium, or 41st millennium. So I think that that's what they're going to be doing with this. They're going to be exploring a lot of different avenues and timelines from the Warhammer Fantasy world. In addition to that, I think that we're also going to be seeing a lot of units that were existing in those times, or units that are brand new that we have not heard of before, that were maybe mentioned in scant little things, like a brand new Zote model, which would make sense, right? Warhammer 40k is getting its new Zote model. Warhammer Fantasy, there are Zotes in Warhammer Fantasy. So again, I think it'd be very interesting if they explore all these different regions of the Warhammer 40,000, or Warhammer Fantasy lore that you can really dive into. So looking at this, though, a lot of people think it is the Age of 3 Emperors. That's the big rumor that kind of goes around, and that's one thing I've noticed about rumors when it comes to game releases, either video game releases or tabletop releases, especially Warhammer related, because there's so many rumors that kind of float around between leaks and so on and so forth. But the one chief rumor becomes the one that everyone tries to substantiate the hardest. And looking at this, I don't necessarily see that this is the Age of 3 Emperors. We see Sigismund, we see Ludwig over here, we see Wilhelm down here in the lower left, and this is Margrethe who pops up. Wait for it, there. So Countess Margrethe of Marienburg was the Grand Theogenist pretty much says, no, I'm not gonna acknowledge her claim to the throne because she is an elected emperor. I guess a better way to go about this would be me to tell you what the Age of Three Emperors is as a whole. So when Madrid Skaven Slayer is assassinated by, well, a Skaven in 1152, you get this real big portion of turmoil, and it's a several hundred-year long civil war throughout the old world. And essentially, it starts with that assassination, and it really embroils mainly in Talabecland and Stirland. That's where the main fighting begins between the Count of Stirland, who elects himself as the emperor, and then the Countess of Talabecland, Ottila, who says, no, you paid a bunch of elector counts to support your claim to the throne. I rebel against that. I think it's total hogwash, and I'm going to come mess you up. And in a kind of interesting turn, she elects herself, or proclaims herself, Empress Ottila I. And this essentially boils down to the Battle of the Talabek. And this Talabecland loses this fight. And then you have the Elector Count of Nordland, who kind of steps in and mediates between the two. And eventually you kind of get this massive schism between these two rulers. So you have the elected emperor, which becomes its own title, elected emperor. And then you have the Attilan emperors, which are all the emperors and empresses that span through Attilia's line. Attilia, not Attila, sorry. It's Ottilia. And basically this embroils further for another like 200, 300, 400 years until we get to the 1500s or so, when the Count of Minland proclaims himself emperor. This causes the Wolf Emperors. So to bring us back on track, we have the elected emperors, the Attilian emperors, and then the Wolf Emperors. And to make matters even worse, it starts to become a civil war, not just simply of politics, but now of religion. You have the cult of Tal, the cult of Ulrich, and both of these do not like the cult of Sigmar. And they all essentially get in a war with each other because each one of these cults supports a different emperor. For example, the cult of Ulrich eventually sides with the Wolf Emperors because it's all set in Midland. Then you've got the cult of Tal cult of Tal is supporting the Attilian emperors. And the cult of Sigmar is supporting the elected emperor because that's supposed to be like, the elected emperor. This is the one that's in Altdorf. So it really kind of is a shit show for like 900 years, more or less. It's not really ended until 2304 when Magnus the Pious is crowned emperor. And that is a long, long time from now. Magnus the Pious is in the same line as Karl Franz. So just to give you an idea of for how long the whole entire empire was really messed up. And the vampire wars that occur like around the year 2000 or so, 2010 to be exact, it's still going on. You still have this schism, and some of those lords are kind of represented on this map. Ludwig is one of the claimants to the throne. You also have Attilia, and you have Wilhelm, as well as Helmut. So looking at this map, I don't see all these names. I see Countess Margrethe. She's born in 1979 in the far left over here. Wilhelm is not, he's not a claimant to the throne. He's on this map. And I don't really see him really in anywhere in the lore for the Age of Three Emperors that I'm aware of. And Sigismund is an important name in the lore of the Three Emperors, but not in the same timeline as Ludwig here. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me what they're showing us with these icons. It could be the Age of Three Emperors. It could be a different time. According to the Age of Three Emperors, it could be further in the future, right before Magnus the Pious takes the throne. It could be somewhere in between, after all three have kind of solidified their emperorships and they're having their successors take place. So this really kind of drums up a lot of questions, and I'm not necessarily 100% sure it is, again, the Age of Three Emperors. But we will see in hopefully a coming day or two, and they don't take like a month to kind of reveal this, and it shows them drawing more and more of the map. Drawing map with Warhammer paints, oddly enough. But they were saying, though, that this will include lore, art, rules, and eventually new models. And I think that's the big thing here, the new model. That's what I was saying is hopefully we'll get some sort of new factions that coincide with portions of the lore. Like, oh, this is this is the Age of Three Emperors, and here is the cult of Ulrich's guards to the Wolf Emperor, and here's a model for the Wolf Emperor. Like stuff like that. It would be kind of cash grabby, but if it had like an overarching contribution to, say, one specific faction, I would be okay with it, right? Like, okay, the Wolf Emperor model is from the Age of Three Emperors, but he can be used in your Empire model or Empire army for 9th edition or something like that. Something where it at least gives a little credence to a grander focus or something of the sort. But we'll kind of see what happens here in the coming months as we hopefully get more reveals from Warhammer The Old World. But as always, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you think it is the Age of Three Emperors, if you think it might be a kind of a shoehorned portion of that timeline, it might be after, it might be before. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comment section below. But as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.